Madam Speaker, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to comment on this very, very important bill, which I hope and I wish that a majority of Kenyans are keen to listen to what this bill is about to do. Madam Speaker, I've not had a long time to look at all the amendments which are being proposed, but I've been able to skim through. And from the onset, I have to, first of all, I think, correct my dear brother, Chair of PAC, in referring to Article 61 of the Constitution. I think the Constitution is very clear that all land in Kenya belongs to the people of Kenya collectively, as a nation, as communities, and as individuals. So I don't think there's anything wrong with a particular individual owning a lot of land. I think the process of acquiring that particular land is what we ought to be discussing here. Madam Speaker, I've looked at this bill and the proposed amendments, and some of them worry me quite a lot, because it appears to me as if the intention is good, but just a way to get to making sure that the issue of land is dealt with accordingly is the one which is questionable. Madam Speaker, if you set up a tribunal, I have no problem with it. But the problem that I have that this bill is trying to do is trying to clip powers from the land court. It's when you are trying to essentially say that in the event that I default, we have a lot of people in this country, Madam Speaker, who have got land, who have not paid rents. And you try because of the economic challenges. Sometimes it is very difficult for you to be able to even pay for your fuel. And you probably have quite a lot of land that was bequeathed to you by your grandfather or your forefathers. And now all of a sudden, you cannot be able to pay the rates. This bill is proposing that, Article 4, that despite subsection 4, if the land is required for a public purpose, the court may not grant relief against forfeiture, even if the grantor makes good the default. Madam Speaker, how many people default in paying their loans? How many people make good of that? So if you take away now the powers of the court to be able to give people relief, then where are we going? Madam Speaker, I think it is important that when we compulsorily acquire land for the good of the public, we first of all consider the rights of the owner of that land. I think Article 40 is very clear of the Constitution, that everybody has a right to own property. And every person has a right, either individually or in association with others, to acquire and own property. So, Madam Speaker, if I acquire land, and I own that land, what this bill is saying is that that value of that land should remain stagnant. That in 2 years' time, if, for instance, the government now want to acquire that land to be able to develop something huge that will incidentally increase the value of that land, that should not be considered. Madam Speaker, I don't think Kenyans are listening. And I think this is the high time that I remind Kenyans that it is imperative that you read the text. When the Committee of Lands was holding public hearing on these amendments, those halls should have been flooded by Kenyans reading the text. Because if you don't, then tomorrow you'll be holding demonstrations which will not help you. Madam Speaker, the Constitution is very clear that when the government intends to acquire land, compulsory land acquisition, compensation should be done immediately. Where do you expect people to go and live? If you say, we are giving you we'll do so within 12 months, within a reasonable time, of the taking of the possession of the land by the commission. A written undertaking indicating the appointment dates not being more than 1 year from the date of the undertaking when compensation is to be made. Madam Speaker, that is wrong. I think if you want to acquire my piece of land, for you to be able now to make it public, to put up a road, then compensate me promptly. I think the move of this bill, and this is why I say, Kenyans, read the text and contribute. Help us understand your needs. Because we could be here and we rush. Earlier on today, Madam Speaker, I was going through YouTube and I was listening to the majority leader in the National Assembly. And he was castigating the Senate for delaying bills. Madam Speaker, I want to correct the leader that we are not delaying the bills. We are reading the text. We want to understand what are these changes that you want to bring in that will affect the future generation. Madam Speaker, about 3 weeks ago, a gentleman from Narok called me and told me that his house is being demolished for SGR, and he has been told the land will be acquired forcefully. He'll be given 1 million shillings to go and look for somewhere else. Madam Speaker, that gentleman has been working. He used to work in Serena, Sarova Hotel. He worked in the Mara. He worked in Narok. And you build a house worth 20 million shillings. And now you come and tell him that we will compensate you within 12 months? Where do you expect him to go and live? He has raised his kids to live a certain way, to expect certain things which he should rightfully provide for those kids. But all of a sudden, their life has changed. I think, Madam Speaker, we really need to be thinking about future generations. Any law that we draft, any law that we amend, we must do so knowing that everything we are doing in this world, we are bequeathing to the future generation. So it should really not only take care of our own immediate interest. Madam Speaker, I have no problem with development. I love development. But let us develop informing the public why it is important to acquire the land. I'm concerned about the delays, Madam Speaker. I sit in the Energy Committee. And in most cases, this country is losing a lot of money, particularly on the Turkana wind project, because of issues of compensation. Today I spoke to a young lady who also raised concern that she has been told that they will be compensated. But every time, Madam Speaker, that the value or the valuation of that land is done, it is so funny that the value never goes up. It keeps going down and down and down. Who is going to protect? Who is going to protect that landowner? The people in Kajiado and Narok are still waiting to be compensated for the SGR which is passing there. The people in Turkana have cost us, the entire public, to lose over 1 billion shillings a month because of the Ketrako line, I think line 5, which is not completed. But where do we bring the balance? We can only bring the balance if we consult widely, if we engage the people, show them the need as to why we must compulsorily acquire their land, but also promptly and immediately, Madam Speaker, pay them for their land. Madam Speaker, one of the things that worries me in this bill is that if you look at Article 6, that says the mover should consider increasing the penalty. This 500,000 shillings or 3 months in prison, or both, is actually very, it's very, what do you call it? it is very limiting. It's not really, it is very lenient. That's the word, thank you. Because if I buy land, or if someone gives me info and tells me, by the way, tomorrow there's a new city which is being built by the government, I rush there and I buy land, and then the next day the government is coming in, and now they want to buy my piece of land, and I make over 1 billion shillings. What is 500,000? I think that penalty ought to be increased so that it makes it difficult for people to take advantage of communities like the Maasai. Madam Speaker, there are so many people who bought land along the road to Suswa from Kimuka. There are those who bought land in Dukamoja, going all the way following the SGR. Today, Madam Speaker, in Suswa town, where most lands there don't even have titles, maybe a piece of 1 acre used to be about 70,000 shillings maximum. Now, even with 5 million, you cannot get a plot just because SGR has come in. And because some people leaked out information, a lot of people came from neighboring counties, they bought a lot of land, they are the ones who are now to be compensated by SGR. So that provision, Madam Speaker, is something that the mover should consider really increasing the penalty. Madam Speaker, one of the key issues that I note, which ought really to be changed, is that the powers which are being given to this tribunal, which has been set up. Madam Speaker, I believe in the separation of powers. The court, Parliament, and also, Madam Speaker, the executive. Now, when you take powers that have been given by the Constitution to the courts, and you give them to a tribunal, and when you look at, Madam Speaker, the composition of that tribunal, it says that the members of the tribunal shall consist of 1 person, appointed among 3 persons nominated by the Judiciary Service Commission, who shall serve as the chairperson, 2 persons appointed from among 5 persons nominated by Valuers Registration Board, 1 person appointed from among 3 persons nominated by Surveyors Registration Board, and 1 person appointed from among 2 persons nominated by the Attorney General. You're bringing in people here who do not have a lot of legal background to be able to protect innocent Kenyans. A young Maasai woman who the husband died, who has not even gone through the succession process to be able to have the instrument of ownership of the piece of land. And you take away the powers of a court to hear the matter in regards to any dispute relating to that land, and you give it to a tribunal where you've put in valuers, you put in people who are interested in commercial activities rather than the rights of those individuals. It is completely in violations of our human rights. So, Madam Speaker, I think the mover needs to consider giving the tribunal certain powers, but the original jurisdictions must always fall within the courts. The courts currently have original and appellant jurisdictions to hear and determine all disputes relating to public, private, and community land and contracts. If you take this power away, Madam Speaker, I thought I still had more time. No, I still have more time, Madam Speaker. I think I got in for a short time. Madam Speaker, I hope we are not in the move, and I hope I'll beg the mover to defer the reply to another date, because it is important for Kenyans to really... This is a bill, Madam Speaker, that we should not rush.
Honorable Senator, you have up to 6:29, so you have just about About 4 minutes. Not 4. You have 3 minutes to conclude.
Madam Speaker, you took one of my minutes. I think one of the key things that I hope that when we get such bills that affect land, Madam Speaker, land is very emotive. And now, I'm worried that we might be trying to rush through this bill and not give people enough time to really interrogate. Because my contribution to this bill would actually recommend that the move of this bill, sit down with a majority over the, maybe even in Nakamkunji, to go through clause by clause, just to ensure that we don't do something today which will cause more pain. There are so many Maasais out there, Madam Speaker, who do not have title deeds in their land. They do not have the title deeds. They don't have the title deeds because they are either in a group ranch or maybe because they didn't know the process of getting that title deed. This bill now is sort of like considering them all as squatters and saying that they will be considered as people who have lived in the area for an undisrupted period of 12 years. If that section is there, Madam Speaker, it has got to be very clear. Because from what I read here, Madam Speaker, the issue of freehold and in terms of valuation, land in Narok now, Madam Speaker, is more expensive than it used to be. But there are parts of Narok where the people who live there do not even understand, they don't even know the value of that land. There are parts of that, of Narok County and Kajiado County, where these speculators come, they buy the land, and tomorrow they buy it for 40,000 shillings. In fact, yesterday, Madam Speaker, I'm not a violent person, but I actually nearly punched somebody when he came and told me, I want to buy you a car so that I can go and exchange with 20 acres of land in Maasailand. Because now, we are so gullible. We are, in our cultures where we value things which don't have any meaning. And it's because we do not have that knowledge. So, Madam Speaker, I think for this bill to support the communities and not to create more poor people in this country, I think it's important that we, Madam Speaker, I still don't have, no more time for me, please.
Your time is up, please. There are no other requests. I therefore call upon the mover.